Hello there, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hi there, welcome back.
So we're going to start off with some Earth changes before we get into the geopolitical, and then go into some real weirdness at the end. Ancient mega eruption destroyed the ozone layer, triggering UV stress effects similar to the aftermath of a NUKE war. And it could happen again. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the massive Toba eruption. And right off the bat, I've always thought this was curious because it happened about 74,000 years ago, and it was a super volcanic eruption of a super large scale. And it really does coincide with the time frame that was given to us from the Law of One of this cycle starting 75,000-ish years ago.
Very interesting.
Isn't that curious?
It is.
If you could ask the guides, is there some sort of correlation between that and what the Law of One saw? Was it truly kind of a restart?
Oh gosh, I don't know what this means. They're showing me like all this golden light. They're showing me a lot of golden light coming in. But they're not saying anything, so we'll have to interpret that.
Golden light coming in. Well, right off the bat, that to me is telling me that was more of a golden age. We know that, going back 75, the Law of One breaks into the 325,000 year periods, which we're in like the last one right now, ending. And when we look at Lemuria and Mu, we have gotten that those were fifth density civilizations that descended over time. And, there's those legends, those line of thoughts, which we kind of got some agreement on, that during the Atlantean, through the Atlantean's timeline, this darkness crept in. And like the beings from Atlantis and Mu are more like Adama and Telos, which, that's up underneath Mount Shasta. And we've been to Mount Shasta and had interactions with the beings there of a fifth density type. And in fact, we do have some guides that are very much like that.
We do. Yep.
So I just find it so interesting that, consciousness and these earth changes, while there is so much going on right now that is definitely artificially flavored, there's also things that go hand in hand here. So as you see, a depiction of the supervolcano eruption, which caused a human population bottleneck, catastrophic drop in atmospheric ozone levels around the tropics, likely to contributed to a bottleneck in the human population between 60 to 100,000 years ago. International research team has suggested, there's a link there to the study, the ozone loss triggered by the eruption of the Toba supervolcano located in present-day Indonesia might solve an evolutionary puzzle that scientists have been debating for decades. Toba has long been posited as the cause of the bottleneck, but initial investigations into the climate variables of temperature and precipitation provided no concrete evidence of a devastating effect on humankind. We point out that in the tropics, near-surface ultraviolet radiation is the driving evolutionary factor, right? That's big. UV radiation, that's a big thing to understand. And with the magnetosphere in decline, evolutionary changes are speeding up rapidly. Climate becomes more relevant in the more volatile regions away from the tropics. So here you see these different, how much magma? Look at Toba. That's massive. That's bigger than Yellowstone, the Huckleberry Ridge, bigger than Lava Creek eruption of Yellowstone 640,000 years ago. And again, I've seen different estimates on that time frame. It does kind of coincide again with the last, it's close. Long Valley is actually closer to the last full, not excursion, but full magnetic reversal that stayed. Again, excursions when the poles switch, but then they jump back. And where you have a magnetic reversal, it stays. So at some point, north becomes south, south becomes north as far as the magnetic poles go. And so this is huge. Yeah, you can see Mount St. Helens is nothing compared to this. The other thing to take from this too is just recognize the power of Long Valley Caldera, which is, you know, over there in California, the potential power that's sitting there. More fish kills, more algae blooms, and more methane emissions. Oxygen levels have dropped in hundreds of lakes in the United States and Europe over the last 40 years. And this article does get into the fact that there's so much toxic chemicals being just poured into the waterways. You know, there's absolutely no respect from the corporate minds in this world of Mother Nature. And, you know, the indigenous people of this world knew that everything on the planet, you know, it's our brothers and sisters, you know, and the earth is our mother, so to speak. You know, it's what sustains the body. The physical body is the environment that we're in. And, you know, so they had a very, very simple concept of Father Sky, Mother Earth, and we've totally lost sight of that. We just, again, this lends credence to the thought that the ones that are truly ruling this planet are just kind of galactic interdimensional pirates that just go from one planet to another and just taking whatever they need or want to take. And it just shows the greedy ways on this planet. Researchers examined the temperature of dissolved oxygen. The amount of oxygen in the water in nearly 400 lakes found that declines were widespread. Their new study found dissolved oxygen fell 5.5% in surface waters of these lakes and 18.6% in deep waters. Increasing, now they're going to blame it on, you know, carbon-induced climate change. There's a lot more going on than that, but most definitely runoff from sewage, fertilizer, cars, power plants. It's all adding to it. And, you know, this is where that left-right split, if you just go along with one side, where you're getting pulled down the wrong path. You know, we could blame everything on the left, and you got some that blame everything on the right, or they'll just simply take whatever position one side takes on every single item. And, you know, that's going to be, you know, basically being short-sighted. Because, yeah, you know, the world is being completely toxically polluted. And, you know, on the right, for instance, you might have a better view in some circumstances of what's going on in the world in the geopolitical sense. And on the left, maybe there's a little bit more concern for preserving things. But then, of course, the left always wants to preserve by bigger government. But when you look at it, whether it's left or right in there, the government's always bigger either way. It doesn't really matter because they're all puppets. And they're puppets to the corporations. And, you know, the corporations, they're the driving force that these families use to, you know, basically bring into effect everything that they want to bring into effect. When we look at the system, the lobbying, the bribing, lobbying's bribing. I mean, come on, let's call it for what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the bribing of these politicians. It's horrible. And we're going to just check out some of the headlines on the Watchers. We see historic storm brings up to 16 feet of snow at summit of Mount Hutt. This is in New Zealand. And over in Argentina, we have the heaviest snowfall in more than 20 years. And we have Delhi over in India seeing the coldest June day amid streak of record-breaking weather. So, you know, things are just falling left and right as, you know, as far as the records go, and the tendency will be towards colder weather with all the volcanoes going off for sure. Mutant human-animal hybrids sparks fears of Frankenstein creatures.
Oh, no.
He says, no, tell me it's not so.
It's so, oh my goodness, look at that.
Yeah, we have a little photoshopping going on here.
A little.
This is real. And so the talk in this is talking about the U.S. trying to keep up with China. by again doing more experimentation, merging different DNA, including human and animal DNA, and then destroying the embryos after a certain time frame. But we know that in these deep underground military bases, this has been going on forever, and it's not just human and animal hybrids that are being created.
Well, there's a lot of these shows you might watch on YouTube, or about like Monster Quest, and these people have these um, descriptions of a lot of these creatures. And when I look into the creature and I look into their energy field, they were actually more like escapees from places that were doing experiments on them. It's really crazy.
Yeah, so and we've talked about how dogmen have been released here to counteract the DRACO. Meanwhile, we have double the average avalanche deaths in Europe, blamed on abundant snow. Let snow in June, maybe in July too. Are we getting closer to that year without a true summer in many places? Now, jumping over to the geopolitical and part of what we were talking about, power of corporations, we'll see with the next article. There's a lot going on here. You see Russia's $186 billion sovereign wealth fund dumps all dollar assets. I talked about this back in 2017, saying and sharing with you guys back in 2017 that since 1984, I've been getting these visions of this time frame in which what we're going to have is basically a civil war on our hands here in the States. And then the Red Dawn scenario is what they've showed me. And they've also showed me what I didn't understand at first were drones, because back in 1984, if you saw things flying around in the sky that were looking at you, almost looked like a mic, camera from your computer, but bigger, and just flying about, watching the movement of all the people just doing their normal lives. Very Orwellian. I didn't understand the technology back in '84, but I've been getting that message. Well, one of the things that has to happen before there actually could be a WW number 3 is a complete uncoupling of these primary these primary countries that would be involved in it from each other monetarily. And many in the know military analysts have said when you see them totally cut off from each other, then the writing's on the wall. It could happen at any moment. So here, Russia is putting basically their assets. They're dumping the dollar entirely. And they are going to put about 40% of it in the euro, which is interesting. 30% of it in the yuan. I would have expected it to be different, a mix there. And then they're putting it in 20% in gold, 5% each in yen and pounds. So the dollar is being cut out. Now, over here in the US, guys, hyperinflation's coming and devaluation's coming. Weimar Republic. This is where assets. Our brother David Devine, Adapt 2030. We talk to him on a regular basis, and he did a good video yesterday that was talking about all this, what's coming, and talking about how they're going to reel it all back in. There's fish on the line right now that are hooked, and they don't realize they're hooked. We're going to have so many houses being foreclosed, unfortunately, and we don't want all this. We're not putting it out there to manifest it. But again, we just have to talk about it because there's a lot of people that don't understand what's going on. And we would love to be just a puppy dog and kitten and light fluffy clouds and a little cute cherub angel channel, but the reality is, the train's on the track. It's heading right towards us. We have to be aware of what's coming because it's not going to be easy to get through. It's going to be very, very challenging. We're heading into times that are so challenging that our parents and grandparents that have seen, horrible conflagrations and global conflict, they might not have gone through as tough a times as what we're going to see with everything that's coming at us in this big confluence of events, because we're at the end of this age. this is the end of this time period, and things are going to change completely. This is the real great reset. It's not just about going into digital currency, or even just having something implanted in you, so that that's the only way you're going to be able to buy and sell, et cetera, et cetera. It's way bigger than that, because this whole system is going to be gone. It's going to be wiped out. Everything that you see, this is not about band-aids here. This whole thing is totally going to be redone. It's not going to be tweaked, and that's where I think some of our fellow light workers are missing a little bit of the point. You're not going to fix this with a band-aid. This is like, amputation of limbs, and you have just a box of band-aids. It ain't going to work. The system isn't functional. It's set up in such a way that it leads to a form of economic slavery. So the whole thing has to go.
Well, you're not going to fix a system with the same broken system. That's just that.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the fixes that they want to give us are going to just simply lead to more monetary enslavement, less freedom, being more hooked, having multiple hooks in us on multiple lines. So we were talking about that $186 billion sovereign wealth fund. It's Russia's bank account. I found this very, very curious. You know what Jeff Bezos' bank account is? 186 billion. Isn't that curious? And this Arnaud, which is, there's argument as to who is the most rich individual. He's got 186 billion too. So these two men, and of course Elon's not far behind them. It's a magic number, 186. What's the occult significance of that? But these two men are as wealthy as an entire country, and a large country at that.
Mm-hmm. I know. I thought that was pretty crazy.
Isn't that curious? The numbers that they give us, 186, and then Elon's, at the back of the bus at 147.3 billion. Poor Elon.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe his girlfriend's going to dump him and go after Bezos because he's just not rich enough.
Perhaps.
Or maybe she just likes the DNA from whatever his heritage is.
Could be.
Could be. There feels like there's a little reptilian flavoring in all this.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't that curious? See, this is the true power of thing. It's certain individuals, and again, and even those guys that we're looking at, they're still figureheads in and of themselves in a way. By the way, B-2 bombers, U.S. B-2 bombers fly over NATO countries and message to Russia. And this was part of that Operation Allied Sky, which involved 100 aircraft from 22 NATO member nations taking part in massive drills. So, again, poking, prodding, I don't think it's wise to poke sticks at a grizzly.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the puppet masters have their plans and they have their hooks into both sides, of course. Of course they do. And there's a statement over here from RT about a NWO emerging, being formed right before our eyes, as we see Russia's deputy defense minister telling RT ahead of key security conference in Moscow. Says, yeah, you're watching it right now. He also said sides are being picked. And again, puppet masters have strings on both sides, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, because WW1 and WW2 did happen. And certain entities got more wealthy and more powerful. And then also, of course, let's equate this, like I said to Cindy, because we've talked about planting fruit trees. And I said to her, are you going to prune the trees?
Oh, of course. Yes.
She's going to prune the trees. Now, her mom, and we love her, she's out there pruning every day. And sometimes I wonder, is she going to prune them away? But another thing that this does, WAR, is it prunes, so to speak. And again, we've talked about the profits. We've talked about powerful industries. I had somebody saying, make sure you scroll down slowly so we can read the article. Well, that's why we give the links, so you guys could go back and read the article. But yeah, it prunes, it reduces, it brings things to a manageable level, because if we listen to what Enlil was supposed to have said at one time, boy, those humans are noisy. There's just so many of them, right?
Well, pruning also it makes way for new growth.
Yes, new growth in a predictable direction.
Yes.
As well. A restructuring. As we know, corporations will declare bankruptcy, then they'll restructure, and they declare bankruptcy, so everybody involved, at the highest levels is protected. To me, it feels like the thing that should be outlawed, and I've said this before, is corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. Corporations shelter individuals. They shelter, well, they shelter perhaps collectives of individuals that are perhaps operating in some secret manners sometimes behind the scenes. Will Israel be held accountable for war crimes? The answer there, no. Again, it's part of this control grid and picture, bigger picture. And somebody had asked, basically, where do we feel that the Israelites came from, or this, the original peoples of this, well, I guess stock, you would say. We call people Semitic, and that's going from Shem, Ham, and Japhet. And there are people out there that view everything in a biblical light, and that's the only way they're viewing it, from a biblical lens. Like, well, everything has to be the original 12 tribes, and, of course, we have the lost tribes, and then, all this, and all the people, indigenous people, must be of the lost tribes or of Israel. But when we really look at things again, there's an outside ET interference, and there's so many different beings that have been on this planet at different times. And don't forget, too, the Mars cataclysm, as many have gotten that a lot of the leadership of the planet now that we have here, really, you could say, comes from Mars.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You could say that. And they did bring about a lot of the systems and a lot of the ways, and you can call it an experiment, if you will, too, to see how far you can get people detached from source.
Yeah, and we could look into things like Khazaria and the Khazarian Mafia, and we could go back to look at migrations of different people and DNA that doesn't add up. As I've shared with you guys, I know my background family-wise. My mother's is more murky than my father's. My father's is much more clear-cut. And when you do 23andMe, which I was talked into it by my naturopath many years ago, so yeah, they have my entire DNA, and et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't add up, because the percentage of Native American, quote unquote, DNA that I'm supposed to have is not as high as what you would expect. And, I know that, I guess it was my great-great-grandmother was born on an Indian reservation in Oklahoma, and was brought there, during the Trail of Tears time from the southeast. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up, but there's a reason why, because, our genetic history is hidden from us as well. Now, again, when you look at everything biblical in the most ancient biblical scriptures, they're not that old. And again, many of the stories are taken from the Sumerian stories, but also taken from Egypt and other places as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, everything is sort of kind of like a bit of a mess, really.
It is, and again, the whole like Zionist type of thing is different than any individual ethnic persuasion. That's something that, again, well, who put together the second coming of Israel. It was a red shield, ROTH, Childs. And that's the one that put out the Balfour Declaration. And it was all planned. This was all planned. And we go back to A. Pike, 1871, 3 WWs. And some will say that has been discredited, but it was published in papers that it was actually something that was stated pre-1900. So it's pre-WW1 that it was brought up in the first place. Things are laid out and planned well before they actually come into manifestation. Reality is far stranger than a lot of the sci-fi movies out there, guys.
Sure is.
EU plans digital ID wallet for blocks post-pandemic life. At this point, it might be one of those suggestions. It might be good if you get one, but it's up to you right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now.
Yep.
Today.
Give it a little time.
Things can always change tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Global food prices surged to a near-decade high, and that's kind of being hidden and downplayed. This is according to the UN. So interesting, the power structure of the world, that the people of the planet don't understand how things are really structured. 87,000 new agents. 87,000. Again, go back to David's video yesterday, Adapt 2030, and I left a comment there about that, because he was talking about how there's going to be so many foreclosures, so many people are not going to be able to pay. And think about this housing boom that we've had, and so many people are overextending themselves right now, trying to secure a place for themselves that they feel is suitable and right and in a good spot, and going to, basically be a good place to ride this storm out. But when things collapse inward, are you going to be able to afford the payment? When the hyperinflation sets in, the food is going up every single week, guys. I mean, you could see it. You can't, as one of our family members who's a single male said, every time I go to the store, it's like $100 just. And I used to live off of $50 a week and eat organic. You can't do that now. It's tough unless you're actually supplying a lot of your own food. Wow, hang on tight and just be as prepared as possible. And do keep sharing what you guys are doing. And now on to the UFO stuff. Perfectly spherical UFOs with mechanical lighting spotted hurling past the International Space Station. We've talked about at least a half a dozen in videos of these things that have been sighted around the ISS. This is really nothing new. They've been there the whole time. They've always been there. As we said, this whole part of the control system is not at the top of the control system. It's not human, guys. And this has been said to be nothing but a person. If it is a person, the vibe that we get is that it's more like somebody that's possessed. And so, is it an alien? Is it a ghost? Is it a demon? Is it a skinwalker? Because it almost has a skinwalker-ish vibe. Is it somebody on some sort of illegal substance that's tripping out? Well, you guys decide. I'll give you guys the links. This is in Jharkhand, and that's over Indonesia, or was this in India?
Wherever it's at. It's super creepy.
I believe it was India. It is creepy. It's very creepy, the vibe. And I'm looking at the hands, and they just don't look right. They remind me more of the grays that I've seen. The hands look longer. As you see here, Jharkhand's viral alien, quote-unquote, video makers reveal the mystery's truth and narrate what they saw. They say it was just a woman that was walking down the street spaced out, but everybody that's looked at it, well, a lot of people see something that does not look quite human. And we did some stills And I don't know, it's got a weird vibe to it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look at that arm. It's all crinked and crooked, and the fingers look a little long there. Or is that a flipper? I'm not sure. It just doesn't feel right. Use your emotions and reach out and feel that and see
Yeah,
what you
again,
guys
this is
get.
part of that sensing.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we're going to be seeing things that are going to just boggle our minds. We're going to have a hard time accepting in the near future. I could say that I could see this being somebody that was overshadowed. Cindy agrees with that as well. It could be just a human that was overshadowed, so to speak, possessed. It doesn't have a good vibe, that's for sure. And just look at the hand. That is not bent. Okay, bend your own hand. I don't think so. It looks distorted. It's weird, granted. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Is it just a play of light? It looks like, you guys remember that little, I can't remember the name. Was it Gumby? Do you remember Gumby as kids? Like, we used to have something called Gumby that we played with that you could bend into all sorts of different positions. This reminds me of Gumby. It just doesn't feel like it's a normal human. So anyway, I just thought we would bring that up and just see what you guys got from that. And then we have a statement from a former president, and of course, all the presidents. Well, I think they're in the know to a degree for sure. Of course, they're on a need to know, so I think there's those that know a lot more than they do. But of course, they have to be given some background. And so, proof of aliens will lead to new religions and massive military spending. So says Barack Obama. And that's a recent statement, guys. So, what do you think? And of course, people have a fundamentalist mindset. Will say they're getting us ready for the Antichrist. They don't want us knowing that Jesus is going to be, landing soon, and the second coming. But again, look at Islam. They're waiting for the Imam Mahdi, and they're waiting for Isa to come back. They call Jesus Isa. They are waiting for him to return as well, but not in the way that Christians are waiting for him to return. And of course, in Islam, they view that the world has to basically convert to Islam, the one true religion. And then Christians will look at things like they're the one true religion with 30,000 different denominations that don't necessarily agree. And that's just from Constantinian point of view. Constantinian Christianity, which is basically giving us just 4 gospels, and instead of looking at the other 196 or so that were out there. And there's far more books that were in circulation in the early Christian circles than there are in the Bible. Way more. Way more. So they picked through, and they edited and redacted and created their own version. And they didn't agree on things. That's why they had the Council of Nicaea, and they had other councils afterwards to come to definitive conclusions, and then call something, this is the one true system. This is the one true belief that you all must have. At first, maybe it was a little optional, nudge, nudge, but then it was, okay, you're a heretic, so now we could burn you at the stake. We could draw and quarter you. Let's see what happens when we tie each limb to different horses and pat the horses on the butts in different directions. This is what happened to those that were Gnostic and of other persuasions if they didn't adopt, and pagans too, if they didn't adopt the official church version. And then, of course, we had Martin Luther and his reforms later on, but they're still looking at the same source material. So there again, you're coming out of the same place.
And you know what I think, as you're saying that, is so many people are stuck in this box and they're afraid to step out. And I think some of that is actually DNA memory, because a lot of these people being reincarnated probably were, had serious issues happen to them for being who they are, stepping outside of the box. And so that carries on to what we have today, why people are so hesitant to take on anything new, in fear of, I think it's their DNA memory at work, remembering what had happened to them last time they stepped out of the box.
Exactly. And part of the reason why this really is one of my major things, is because I've been through this before, and I've had these visions that I have always thought were past lives. And then Cindy confirmed to me, yeah, you were basically tortured and executed twice for exposing this stuff before. So it all makes sense, why I had these visions, and she's seen it. So it was confirmation. And not only Cindy, but I had 2 other psychics tell me this too in the past. There's a reason why the Templars were executed, and it wasn't because they were well, it's not the official version. They're heretical. They really, it's all about power and control. And so again, like we had said before, if they came out with the fact that Yeshua, had a relationship with Mary Magdalene, and they actually had kids, it would negate the church's story. And the church is all about control. It's how they have controlled minds and hearts and belief systems for years. And it's not just the Catholic Church, of course. There's other control systems out there, other control grids. So the Pope and the French King ended up, executing them all, burning them and killing them because they had hidden knowledge. And it's not just them. We could talk about the Cathars. We could talk about many other groups as well that were persecuted, persecution of the witches. Again, people with just innate abilities, knew how to use herbs and things like that to cure. And then, of course, the indigenous people of the world as well that had a connection to the earth, that had shamanic ways, that could commune with people on other densities, with beings on other densities, which again can just totally destroy the official narrative, official story. And that's why we have all this. So yeah, will they try to give us a new religion? Sure, they will. A religion so they could control us. They're going to always give us a new narrative and a new. We need to just simply develop our own sense of spirituality and respect each other. Again, take the. Why are you trying to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye when you can't take the plank out of your own? There again.
We all create our own surroundings, and we need to be responsible for that too. So if something's not going right, who's in control of that thing that's not going right? So we need to take back our sovereignty, take back our power, and do what's right for us, not what somebody else says.
Yeah, and again, why? And this is part of the biggest picture too, because there will be links sent to me that will say, well, just read this and you'll understand. You're using your left brain. You're not knowing anything. You're just taking in more information. Learn to know, as in gnosis with a G. That's something that's experiential, and you're only going to get there from developing your own kundalini, opening up the third eye, creating a Merkaba, developing your energy body. Then you will know. Why rely on somebody else's story or take of a story, especially one that's been edited and redacted throughout thousands of years? It just, to me, I just don't understand it. Where we could go within. Source, Prime Creator, God with the big G is right inside you right now. Don't you know that the King of Heaven lies inside you right now? It's up to you to just unlock it and to manifest it and grow it, feed it in the right direction. So there again, we don't need any more of their narratives. We need to just simply go within. Thank you guys for being part of the channel and part of the family. Make sure you're subscribed and have the bell clicked for notifications. If you found this interesting, informative, even if you don't agree with everything, that's fine. It's all about just awakening people. And we do appreciate thumbs up if you did find it interesting, if not controversial. As always, thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. And if you need to reach us for a session, it's evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.